This episode of Foil the World is brought to you by realwatersports.com. Use affiliate code Foil the World for upgraded shipping and a way to support the show. Aloha Foilers, this is Brian Finch with Foil the World Podcast, Episode 3. And today we have a special guest, my friend Dave Baracevic, on Instagram at Jax_foil_froth. And there can't be a more appropriate foil handle than that.
Thanks, bud.
Welcome to Foil the World Podcast, Dave. You're my
man.
first guest, and I'm really happy it turned out this way. Super honored you're my first guest because you have a lot to do with my story. Our story's intertwining here in Jax as foilers. And welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, man. Honored to be on the show. It's been fun knowing you since you moved here, and it was just a nice treat to have someone here and a welcome part of the crew.
Yeah, Dave and the rest of Jack's crew definitely welcomed me in open arms. It really made a transition moving from Hawaii to northern Florida so much easier, you know, having a crew and like-minded folks and, you know, all the help getting set up and, you know, those challenges of getting set up in a new city and all that kind of stuff. When my car was, before I had bought my truck, and between cars, Dave lives about 2 miles north on Mayport Avenue or Mayport Road.
South.
About
A little south.
Oh, that's right. We're on the East Coast. I do this constantly.
Yeah.
I still
Close enough to
come
come grab you, right?
Yeah. So Dave was picking me up all the time, bringing me to surf, and was, and you know, steering me in the right direction.
When to surf, what breaks at what tide, and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, that was actually huge too.
Yeah.
Helping me a lot with forecasting those things. Anyway, Dave, you know, tell the listeners a little bit about your background, where you're from, and how you got into foiling.
Yeah, long road, I guess, but grew up in New York and was like a semi-athlete, skateboard, BMX kid, and the second I could drive, I had to learn how to surf. And that was really humbling. So we had our crew up there, and we were the first guys to kind of surf out in Hampton Bays, and they weren't really keen on, you know, new guys hanging out there. And so this was back in like the late 80s, like 89, 90, and no one had really been surfing out there. So we were not welcomed at first, and we just crowbarred our way into the lineup. But moved from Long Island to get to some water. I did 5 winters up there in New York, and I won't do that again. But wound up moving to Wrightsville Beach and Wilmington, North Carolina, and that kept, you know, the surf, slightly water warmer, good vibes. And actually that Wrightsville Beach reminds me a lot of Jax Beach. So when I was able to move here, I moved to Florida in 2006 and just have been bouncing around Jacksonville for a year, Orlando, Tampa, and now back here to the beach. And this is the last stop, hopefully. So it's been a journey, you know, and along the way I had lived in Tampa and not a lot of waves over there. So a buddy of mine, Randy, had got me, said, you know, you got to pick up a stand-up paddleboard just because there's no waves.
At that time, you were shortboarding?
I was a shortboarder that probably could only shortboard a couple times a year and had kind of lost the flame for it in a sense because, you know, it's just the second you live far away from the beach, you just never get that water time that you need to maintain any sort of level. And if you're driving across the state to catch waves and the tide's wrong or the wind changes, it just kills you. So the paddleboard thing for me got me in the water and really small surf in the Gulf. And if you're driving across the state 2 hours, 2.5 hours to catch waves, the paddleboard is almost skunk proof. So, you know, start out with a paddleboard and a shortboard in the car and cross your fingers. But it was fun. And that eventually led me to actually meeting Eric Antonsen and then eventually to foiling. So actually started the foil journey on stand-up because I had that background and can still do that. We don't do it too often, but it's a good thing to have in your back pocket, I guess, especially if you're going to learn downwind, which I haven't been too keen on trying too hard yet. So
bring me back to the first time you saw a foil, heard of a foil, and
Yeah.
then made that conscious effort to take on the journey.
I think like everyone else, I think, it's probably Laird a long time ago. Is that like stepping into liquid or what, right?
Yeah, 2003, I believe.
And I saw that, and then obviously saw Kai Lenny with the downwind between the islands on the big, stand-up paddleboard with the foil on it like everyone else, and didn't think too much about it. Thought it was cool, and I think I had done a trip with Eric to Costa Rica when he was transitioning from living there to living here, and
I forgot about it because Eric was a SUP coach and SUP camp owner and a very competitive SUP surfer as well.
Straight up ripper. Yeah. So got to go on a stand-up trip with him and a couple of boys, and he made a run a board, so I got a new board, and we caught some cool waves. And he was moving to Jax in that transition. By the time he had come back to Jacksonville, he was SUP foiling, and I was like, at first I was all frothy because I was like, man, I got my buddy to stand up surf with and try to rip it up, and then all of a sudden he's got onto this new thing, and it didn't take me too long to get pulled into that. So
he rug pulled you, man. He made you a SUP board and then started SUP foiling.
Oh it, yeah. I think before that, I know we'll talk about it a little later, but yeah, I had another stand-up board before that, and then Eric made me like a 6'5" portal stand-up, and that was super fun. But yeah, the addiction's real. Anyone who's listening to this is going to know that. But I've done very little. Zero stand-up surfing and very little prone surfing since then, and the prone one kills me because I really should put a little time in there, and I'm just so afraid to be like most surfers don't want to foil because they're going to be a kook on a foil, and I'm afraid to surf again because I'm going to be a total kook on a surfboard.
I'm right there with you. I've fantasized about recouping my shortboard skills that I put 20 plus years of dedication into.
Yep.
But I just can't bring it to. I don't have it in me to do it here in Jax.
I don't either. And the waves are good here, but it's spotty. When it's good, it's good. But I mean, compared to what you were surfing, it's probably not that good.
We need to go on a secret surf retreat for a couple weeks.
Bring the mid-lengths,
and then come back home and try and maintain skills from there.
There's a few of our boys here that have been switching back and forth and keeping it. I know Robbie and Matt. And Eric to a certain extent as well, but
Eric,
I think the only way I'd do it would be on a board with a lot of foam.
I feel like I'm just too far gone at this point. I need
a
wood shedding experience to go sneak away and just
private woodshed.
Can't have anyone looking.
That sounds sketchy.
I actually on what was it? 2 years ago now, October. I went with Alex. Was that a year? Last October or previous? I can't even remember now. It's all blending together. But I went to Nicaragua with Alex Riptish,
I remember that.
One of the local foilers and buddy of ours. And so I went shortboarding one session in northern Nicaragua at this beach break called The Boom, and it's super punchy, super hollow wave that I have many years of experience surfing.
Yeah.
And
you lived down there.
Yeah, I lived down there. And I took the shortboard out, and it was embarrassing and difficult. And I got pounded, and it was so frustrating.
Yeah.
It was like I was close, but I kept getting clipped and couldn't hold my rail and like really tuck under the lip line, and it was doubling up and kind of thick, and it was just an ugly experience.
It's hard to surf a thruster with your back foot like in the middle of the board. That seems to be what happens.
Totally.
Yeah. I've surfed up in Nicaragua, but I didn't get down to the Boom. But yeah, it would be, I found the transition from going to stand-up surfing to prone surfing pretty easy. And I should have done more shortboard surfing when I was a stand-up guy. But now even trying to ride a stand-up board without a foil underneath, it's kind of weird.
Just laying on a normal surfboard,
forget it.
Without a foil, if it's been a while, is such an odd experience.
Yeah,
it starts to shake beneath you. It's like
you don't know the balance point because you're trying to be too far forward on the board, and it's a mess. Yeah, that's why I think my one buddy is like super good longboarder, and he can switch, and he's learning, and I think he's doing really well. He's learning how to foil, but he said he could switch really well between a longboard, like classic nose rider longboard, and a foil, but shortboard, he said, is really tough. But he's impressive, Randy, because he does them all. So, which is pretty cool. I'm a little jealous.
So take me back to your first session. What were you riding?
So I think I had ordered a board from Eric, and I had
This
found
is a foil board now?
Yeah, this is my first stand-up
Okay.
foil setup. So I think Eric was actually helping me too. And we're looking around on like Craigslist, and there was a guy that had like a Takuma 7.6 Chaz down in Rockledge, like Cocoa Beach area. And so I had to take a 2.5 hour drive, or maybe we met in the middle. But I picked up a used stand-up board, sight unseen, and then there was a slingshot setup that was on Craigslist, and sure enough, it was Mike Pedigo that was selling his. I think he had just graduated from that slingshot setup to, I think it was the Neil Pride, the MP.
So did you know Mike at this point, or
It's funny.
had heard of him just as
I
a
think I
surfer,
knew of
longboarder?
him. But we have a couple mutual friends. Dave Slemp for sure, who knew Pedigo, and so we had a couple mutual friends and some crossover friends. But yeah, sure enough, I met him at his house and bought that like full on aluminum slingshot death trap. No, it was perfect. Big front wing. I forgot the size, but it was big rig. And for stand up, I think you definitely better to have a bigger setup than a smaller setup, especially when you're learning. You learn how to wrangle.
I think
front
that's
foot.
true and prone and everything else
For
too.
sure. Yeah. So at that point, and I think at that point, Eric had bought like a little inflatable, or maybe shortly thereafter, and was doing some tow-ins in the ocean on flat days in the summer, like flat days. And if I wasn't I did it behind the boat a couple times. I almost pulled, to this day, one of the worst tacos ever. I'm not a big wake guy, so I was pulling on the rope and leaning over my tow side rail just enough for that foil to come up out of the water, and I think it just missed my face by like inches. It was terrifying. And so I did mostly just on pretty much almost flat days of just trying to be in position, paddle into position on the stand-up board where if there was a wave, you could catch it. And even if there's not enough juice to get you going, just start paddling, like pretty proficient paddler on a stand-up board. So big advantage, but definitely remember, first time coming up out of the water, you're 2 inches off the board. You feel like you're 12 feet off the water, and it's just terrifying. Yeah. And it's funny because there's a lot of dudes around here now that are learning to foil, and it's fun watching them because there's just no shortcuts to all those experiences and feelings. So,
It kind of reinforces your personal like badge of honor, right?
Yeah,
You've
for
seen
sure.
other people
Boot camp.
going through that story. You salute those folks.
Yeah.
Yeah. You think back to how it was.
And it crosses over into winging too. Like, right. I mean, I'm a flat pond guy winging and been just too much of a puss to be in the ocean and pay my dues, and I'm close to getting it. But same thing, like all the boys now are like, you're like right there. If you put in a couple more sessions, it'll click. And once you start riding waves, that clicks too. So I need to put in the time. I've been slack. I've been prone, no downwinding. And everyone else is really kind of moving along. So I'm pretty happy prone. If I add the winging thing in, great. If downwinding later, I can imagine the level of frustration that I'm going to have, that's going to be there. It's inevitable, even with good paddle skills. And our conditions are spotty. There's been some runs you guys have done where you thought it was going to be epic, and it's just epic fail because the wind direction changes or dies or, a lot of factors, and then pickups and.
I mean, you got to pay the bills, right?
Absolutely.
That's part of the learning evolution.
Yeah.
Is just putting yourself out there and.
I've been trying to put all my bill paying into just prone.
Into the prone.
Yeah.
Well, you're selling yourself so short on the winging, because the last time I saw you out winging, you're out there tacking and jibing.
No tacks.
Excuse me. You're out there jibing.
Both ways. Yeah, both ways. Which
yeah.
that's a big accomplishment.
What I was you can tack out, right? You're able to.
I can slog out switch. I can't, not on foil though.
Okay, I might be overselling.
Yeah, exactly. I think you are.
But I do remember the last time seeing you in the pond, like in the beginning session, you were having a hard time. I was wrapping up my session.
Yeah.
I was driving away like really slow.
Yeah.
And I was watching you pop right up,
Yeah.
cruise out, did your jibe, cruise straight back in, and you had your toe side and your heel side. You weren't slogging.
No, it depends on the wind. Like for us at the pond on a northeast wind, I have to slog out as a regular footer,
Right.
and then get up on foil coming back towards the shore. So yeah, depending on the wind direction, I wouldn't have to slog out to get up on foil. And then I think I got up on foil with the wing on the other side twice, you need a lot of wind. That's a good one to have. But I feel like all that goes out in what happens at the pond does not happen in the ocean until you figure it out. So there's a bunch of the boys now that are really getting after it, and I have not paid the proper dues.
It's one of the hardest, steepest learning curves in almost all sports, it seems like. And that it's different. It's going to be a different experience depending on your conditions, your hometown.
Well, Eric and I
situation.
think,
one thing I always recommend is learning in a spot like the pond, where you have what I call a catcher's mitt. You have your worst case scenario, you're going to be blown to shore, and you can walk back or hitchhike back.
Walk of shame.
Walk of shame or hitchhike back, or whatever your bay experience is, whatever kind of setup you have. Like oftentimes in those bay setups, you end up on the other side of a road and an access point. It takes a while to get around, that kind of thing. But any kind of catcher's mitt situation where you can get blown.
Yeah. I think the walk of shame at the pond is done, but I think I've got at least 3 or 4 more walk of shames in the ocean before I get it. But yeah, like Eric and Matt, and I think and you have told me when you're jibing in the ocean, use the wave to help do the jibe. And so I was in a position a couple times last time I was out, and it was probably a perfect day to be out there. So I didn't feel bad about that, but it was a northwest wind. So I was going out into the ocean and then kind of had to slog back, which is fine. But I wasn't getting my arm out to catch that wing on the jibe, and it was frustrating because I felt like I was doing everything right. But
you were keeping the wing too close to your body.
I don't know. I felt like with the energy pushing down the beach, everything felt further away from me. So by the time I came around on the jibe, I was almost kind of stalling out, which something I haven't at the pond. I was kind of making most 75-80% jibes, and in the ocean like 0%.
Yeah, I think I'm imagining is about timing that oncoming swell. And so
but I guess that's my point. Like the timing at the pond in flat water versus the timing in the ocean are they're very different. It's interesting.
What did you struggle with initially in a timing sense? You mentioned with catching waves, subfoiling.
Honestly, I think I was pretty hardcore subfoiler for 10 years. So it was more just managing lift and making sure you're not leaning over the board, because I think, with stand up, if you're trying to crank a turn, you're like leaned on your paddle's bent. So you're so far over the side of the rail, leaning onto that, the toe side or the heel side rail of the sup board. And the only way to move those big boards is to really lean over the side and use the paddle. So that obviously doesn't fly in foiling. So I think it was just really staying grounded, and the old adage where if things aren't going right, just get out of there, because bad things happen if you don't. But the catching of the waves and the positioning was pretty good for me just with sup, So that part was good. And Eric was a good coach when he was around. And then I think Eric had a project he was working on, so he dipped out of town for a while. And I started foiling with Nate, our boy Nate, and
Nathan Shue.
Nate Shue.
Shout out to the wingmaster.
Full on waterman. But Nate and I did a fair amount of stand-up surfing together too over the years, and he was kite foiling, I think, at that point, and maybe just making the transition into wing foiling. So he had that super deep background of winging and kiting. So he has become, just jack of all trades. Well, he doesn't downwind, like stand-up downwind, but I'm pretty sure he could do that if he wanted to too.
So during lockdowns, you guys were out scoring because you were subfoilers.
Yeah, big time. And it was, there was at one point where the beaches were locked down, which ironically, right, safest place to be, but they thought people were going to be congregating on the beaches, so they closed them down for 2 weeks. And there was a few beaches south of us where maybe you could get out, but the only place you can get out was we found a place at it was a boat launch, and you could paddle out there and get into the ocean, but you basically had to paddle a mile out through the inlet where we foil and
the playground.
Yeah, the playground, the skate park, but it's a long paddle. but we did it, and we were able to score like super uncrowded waves. And there
It's
was some,
also it's a little creepy being all the way out there too, because there's a lot of wildlife.
it's always creepy,
There's-
especially on the other side where
Yes.
where we were doing. It's exceptionally sharky and sketchy.
You're pretty far from everything.
You feel like you're in Central
Including the
America,
shore.
looking
Yeah.
back at the beach. And
Right.
Yeah, it's such a weird river mouth feel. But when that place works, it's actual full blown point break. And we were sup foiling, kind of like the second point there. And there was a couple guys on longboards, and there was a couple guys that paddled out on stand up boards, towing longboards and shortboards and coolers. Because if you were going out there, you might as well be out there.
You're out to
And
stay
it's
for a while.
It's a long paddle, yeah. Like drop anchor and just do it.
So I've committed to bringing my downwind board, sup board with me to the skate park for those kind of days now, just to shore up my paddling, improve those skills.
Yeah,
And sometimes it's the best call.
definitely.
It's the best call for those conditions, and when it's doing that, it's hard to track down. If I paddle out there all the time on a prone board, but with the leaderage we're riding and the way that wave crumbles and rarely in the exact same spot,
Yeah.
just the sup board just makes so much sense. And
Yeah.
I started to take that out and,
Yeah.
and committing to bringing it every time, because many times it's the best option.
Definitely, especially in the summertime when it's just it might be enough for the swells to hit the bar and sort of run, but they don't really break. So we were able to kind of get up on broken waves on stand up, which was insane.
And still put in a good minute to 2 minute ride.
Oh, yeah.
All the way to the inside.
You could get a runner all the way into the inlet, and then you could just canoe paddle back out. You didn't even have to stand up and take your time. And it was funny because at that place, like I never pictured myself proning there ever, because the way the bar was back then, we could catch it so far out there on the stand-up boards, and when the tides were different, you just surf different parts of the sandbar. And but yeah, it wasn't really until I think Eric at one point had kind of gotten out of stand up and gotten into prone, and I remember being like, "Well, that's not going to work well out out there." And obviously it does, but you got to have a pump game to really maximize it. And but once you have that, it opens up that place like crazy. But to your point, there are days where you got to throw this up in the car there. Just whatever is going to be the most fun on the day sort of attitude. It's like riding a longboard versus a shortboard.
Right.
Yeah, all good.
So when you first started foiling, you were sup foiling, you had Eric, obviously was the catalyst here in
The
Jax.
Godfather.
Nate was
Yeah.
already wing foiling at that time.
Nate, I think, was probably in the beginning of wing foiling. Nate and I were pretty much same level on the stand-up thing. And but at that point, there wasn't too many guys really doing it around here.
Who else was there? If you know?
I'm trying to think. I think maybe Matt had gotten into it at somewhere around that time. He was pretty early on for sure, and maybe I just didn't know him at the time, because a lot of the boys we met via Eric, and his place, his beach break there being the epicenter of the whole scene. I don't think I had met Austin or Robbie or Kirk or any of the Greg. I think had at that point, if they were getting into it, we just didn't know them yet.
How many years ago was this?
I think this is 3 years now, or
Right.
just over 3 years. I'm trying to think of the
just with the
timeline
foil.
with the boys. But, my focus, I didn't even think about winging at that point. So my focus was just really, sup. And then
So about 3 years ago, there was just
it was a handful.
three, four of you guys.
Yeah. And I'm excluding the kite guys, but I'm talking,
Right.
prone stand up. They're obviously Pedigo. He had, I think he'd been foiling a year or two before me. I think Eric had a year
He's
on
down in St. Augustine.
St. Augustine. So he's like an hour away, and he comes up pretty often, which is insane. But yeah, at the time it was few. Dasher, right? He was out there with us, and Chris, who just moved out to Oregon, or to the gorge.
Yeah.
And it was pretty lean back then.
So nowadays, how many prone foilers do we have here in Jax? 15?
I think maybe
There's not I'd say 12, 10 or so
I'd say-
regulars.
I'd say 15, 20 regulars. Yeah, which is pretty crazy.
And then add in,
And then there's some winging guys that
whole
have gotten
crew.
into, prone, right? There's some of that going on. A lot of the prone guys got into winging. A the kite guys got into winging. So yeah, it's been a cool, a very fun scene. I always think like the golden years of surfing back in like the 50s, I guess, where you just didn't see surfers. And if you saw a surfer, you're like, hey, what are you riding? Or I'm glad to have somebody to share these waves with. And it's not really like that anymore.
Foiling's, yeah, that's a universal vibe still in foiling.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's one of the beautiful things
Yeah.
about it.
And I didn't get in at the ground floor, but not too, pretty relatively. So it's just crazy fun to see what everyone's riding or share some waves. And that we definitely, at least here in Jax, we have that, everyone, it's super happy to see everybody out there and everyone progressing.
Let's talk a little about your personal foil evolution and the kits you were riding.
Sure.
I know I came in when you were kind of battling between systems.
Yeah.
But
I hated that.
In the last year and a half, it's been really fun watching you progress at a pretty solid clip.
Thanks.
And how old are you now?
52.
You're 52.
It's terrifying.
You've got big old juicy quads, cantaloupe calves. You're in great shape.
This will do it, right? And
you're still learning at a fast pace, which is so cool to see.
Thanks, man. Well, listen, if you can't learn around, I got Eric and you and Pedigo here, and like it's just
Austin.
It's in Austin. I mean, it's like a circus. It's crazy. And even John Dodd up in Fernandina, and there's just a lot of ripping going on. So and coaching. I mean, it's like anything else. You think you're doing one thing, and you're just not doing it. So you guys are particularly good at saying, hey, you were a little high on the foil or not high enough, or your nose up or whatever it is. Those things, I mean, you should get better when you've got that going on.
I say this ad nauseum, but it's one of my stronger beliefs is that a high tide raises all ships. Right?
There you go.
And it's all about building each other up, helping ourselves out as much as possible, right? Because we always have the same passion.
We were talking about it, before this. Like at any level, I get stoked watching any of the guys conquer a next level, where it be like kicking out, grave digging, whatever it is.
What's explain grave digging? This is a term I think Dave and I coined. We just made up one day.
Yeah,
watching each other struggle, pumping out of like the inside foamy section with no speed.
Right.
And so when you do that, or here, you explain it better.
Right. So you're kicking out over like a closeout section essentially, and you've got no speed, and you're gonna get low on the mast, and it's like having a 4-wheel drive vehicle. Can you pump your foil back up on like out of the sand, out of the quicksand?
Can you lock the hubs before you?
That's exactly
sink
right.
To the frame.
Yeah, and the gravedigger around here, I think is just so important.
You're almost stalled.
Yeah.
You're just putting all your juice into this pump and to bring it out of the hole and back up on the foil.
Yeah.
And that's what we refer to grave digging. It's funny when we see each other do that. We can be, 100 yards away, and we'll do like the shovel, we'll do the shovel dance and just like a nice, a little nod to a nice grave dig. But
absolutely. It's like your board slapping the water. I mean, you've got nothing. And, I think foil choice helps with that too.
Yeah. You feel dead.
You're dead. And then you're thinking about your energy levels. Like, because if I get out of this thing now, I got to go pump 80 yards out to find something else.
Totally.
But it's a mandatory technique, I think.
Here in Jack especially.
Yeah, for sure.
So you started on the slingshot setup.
Yep.
Do you remember what size wing that was?
It was huge. I forget. It was like the biggest one,
that
pretty
94
much.
or something. I forget what.
It was massive. Kind of looks like the Lift 200, I think. Right? Like it's got a super wide cord and.
Okay,
we'll make it.
What'd you write after that?
Yeah. So from there, I think I jumped into Axis, and at that point, I was pretty much straight sup. I think I had got my first Prone board somewhere in there and tried it a couple times. But yeah, I rode the Axis setup, which was really pretty fun. Like at the time, I think I had the 1000 and the 900, which I think were pretty important foils for the time. And then they started doing a little more high aspect stuff. So I think I got the 1010. And I think by the time
Were you double dipping at this time?
Yeah,
when you're
yeah,
riding?
yeah. No, for sure. I think even on the 1010, might have got my first like quad dip on stand up, which I was kind of proud of because that thing pumped really well. For a you're riding a big, relatively heavy sup. That thing was good. I didn't loved how it turned as much, and at that point, I was kind of making the transition into maybe doing a little more prone foiling, but still mostly stand up. And so from Axis, I went to Tacoma and I took a gamble on Tacoma. I didn't, nobody had one around here. Like at this point, it was like Nate was probably riding F1. There weren't a lot of brands. I think Pedigo was riding, Neil Pride or GoFoil at the time. Oh no, I got the Neil Pride setup after Axis. And then I got Tacoma. So like Eric had gotten into Neil Pride. Eric and Mike, I think. And so that seemed like the natural progression. A little more surfy. The Axis were good, but I think they were better suited for SUP. And things were changing really fast there. So no harm, no foul against Axis, obviously. But so then I went Neil Pride. And I think by the time I got the Neil Pride, I had really committed to prone. And that was challenging as well. Definitely challenging. I think with the years of stand-up, I got really good at positioning for stand-up surfing, but I had lost some of that positioning for shortboard positioning, which it was in there, but I just had to kind of get it back.
Recalibrate.
Yeah, for sure. And it's pretty big recalibration actually. The turns are so instant on a prone board versus more drawn out on the SUP. But yeah, that was fun. And then from Neil Pride, I think I went to Tacoma. And that was fun.
Is this the 1250?
No, this was like the LOL. So I had the 1600, which was like for small waves around here. It was really good. When it got bigger on stand up, I could ride the 1300. And then at one point I got the 1900 when I started winging, or even for riding like super small bumps out at the inlet there and just being able to pluck off anything and glide and pump. And that was a fun wing. All those wings were really fun for the time.
I had the 13 and the 16 back in the day. And
Yeah.
I didn't put a ton of time in on them.
Yeah.
But they're kind of ahead of their time in many regards, that they had a great roll for how much like lift quotient they had. They had quite a bit of lift.
Yeah.
But some of the downwind videos that were coming off of those were some of the first like downwind videos where the guys had a ton of glide, but they were also ripping like really
100%.
nice turns. And I'm thinking of in particular, the guy Laurent, I guess, the LOL,
Yep.
a French dude, I believe,
Yep.
that collaborated with Tacoma to make that those series of wings. And I remember seeing him and some of his friends just ripping these incredible turns out. Surf,
And at the time, that didn't exist.
Yeah, you didn't see much
No,
of that. There was some here and there, but yeah.
I remember your review of the Tacoma 1300 on your YouTube channel.
Oh, that's funny.
No, like there was I rolled the dice on Tacoma here big time, and it was fun. And even like Eric, I think he kind of rips it on everything. But I remember when he got that 1300 and he was just freaking on it. And even still, Eric and I were talking, and some of his clips on that will hold true today with the level he's at now.
What's homeboy's name? Jay? Jay was still riding it up until not long ago.
Oh yeah, Jaybird.
Yeah. He's a triathlete or a runner or something.
Yeah,
right?
he's insane.
Some gnarly. He's super.
I want to see like a death match of him and Adam.
Oscar, the Aussie guy.
Our Adam.
Oh yeah,
the White Walker.
Yeah, excuse me. Yes. Oh, dude, the two cardio kings. I want to see him just pump out to sea whoever.
Unbelievable. But
only one man returns.
Yeah, two men enter, one man leave. But the 1300 was super legit, and at that point, I think I was pretty much prone. And then the 1210 came out, and that was groundbreaking.
The 1210 seemed like a game changer for Jax. I feel like I arrived right around the time, I think just a bit later than when you, Mike, and Eric were riding the 1210. I keep calling it 1250, but the Tacoma 1210.
Yeah.
The Kujira.
Yep. That was a groundbreaker. That was best of both worlds, and
that wing
super
had
good.
Great pump and a great low end with carve and it's just very suited for these waves,
And very
especially at
adjustable.
your guys' body weights too.
Yeah. I'm
Your
like a
guys'
buck
size.
90, buck 95. So having that extra lift on small days was super good. And I think everything I had ridden, I had just gotten used to a very front-footed feel. So in that sense, you know, it was great. It was a game changer. And yeah, at that point, like I was trying to get my pump game somewhat, you know, decent. Consistently making double dips and green water connections and all that good stuff. And then Armstrong came out with a bunch of stuff. And I think everybody was really excited about it.
So shortly after moving here, I moved here in the summer, just before summer, and we went through a summer when you were
Armstrong.
playing with Armstrong.
Yeah.
And you had a couple moments of brilliance with an overwhelming amount of frustration.
Yeah, exactly. Like, and it's funny because I watch you guys. You guys can pretty much ride anything. You'll make it work. I think for me, I just struggled with the Armstrong stuff. And again, not because it's not good. It's super good, but it compared to everything else I had ridden, it's just a very different feel. And I think it's a more neutral footed. I mean, you rode a bunch of Armstrong stuff. I mean, obviously, for a long time. And I think if I would have stuck with it, I would have gotten it. But at the same time, it made me realize, like, for what I was looking for, what I was used to, that 1210 at the time was just. I remember when I switched back. I think I had a couple sessions with you, and I was like, "This is okay."
Yeah, I was like, okay, I was wrong. I was wrong, Dave. Let's stick on the 1210. Yeah. Right off the bat, you got right back to ripping.
Yeah. It was night and day. And
so you were having a hard time with, what was it, the 1550?
Now the 1550 V2 was probably my favorite of the bunch. And we had a super fun session on the 1125, and I kind of had worked it out and gotten the setup right and gotten the tail right and played around with some tail shimming to get more of a front foot feel. And that would have worked out for sure. And then I got the 925, and for me, in less than perfect conditions, it wouldn't have been an everyday foil for me.
That's where you drew the line.
That was it.
At the 925.
Yeah, you're giving up. I don't mind giving up a couple waves of just complete failure. But after that,
that was the foil that broke Berechevic's back.
Yeah, that was it. But then my thoughts on the 1550 V2. It reminded me the most of the Takuma 1210, and it turned really buttery. But at that point, it's still a pretty big foil, so it made sense to go back to Takuma. And so I wound up selling off the Armstrong gear, and I wanted to have another setup. So actually, I went GoFoil because they were just coming out with. And my buddy Nick is the GoFoil guy, so they were just coming out with the RS stuff and the GT stuff.
Nick is the GoFoil guy, meaning?
He was actually their supplier for the States. And so he has a company called Solstice Sports. He was doing GoFoil and then his own stuff, but he was working with Alex and basically supplying GoFoil.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So I was able to get my hands on some GoFoil gear pretty early on when the GTs and the RSs came out. And that was super fun. And again, GoFoil being pretty front-footed was just a super easy switch from Takuma to GoFoil. And, the GoFoils were great. The Takumas were really sharp. I had a fun stitches incident with the 1210.
This is the 1210 Kajura with the tips still on, right?
Yeah, and eventually those got taken off.
So you nearly cut your brachial artery.
I don't know. It was on my bicep, so that there wasn't any veins there. But that was with a 3-2 wetsuit on. It just sliced right through. And it's so funny. Like we had just had a couple days in a row of junk surf, and then we finally got a clean day, like butter day, like buttery. And all the boys were out there, and I was so tired. My legs were numb, and I was just sloppy. And I took off on a wave, and I was just not paying attention, and I just tacoed, and the board came up, and the front wing got my bicep, the back wing got like my rib cage, and it ripped through my suit on the rib cage. It ripped right through the suit on my bicep, and man, it was sketch. And our buddy Matt, who wound up being a doctor, watched the whole thing, and so went to the walk-in with my wetsuit on and got like 7 stitches. And, Yeah, those things are sharp. Well documented. But around here, I think everyone started sanding tips pretty much after that.
Yeah.
I think a couple of people had a couple close calls, but that was like the warning bell.
Tips started disappearing in the night.
Yeah, for sure. that was during the time of a lot of sanding going on around here. Mostly at Eric's house, I think.
Yeah,
oh, your place too. Chopping tips.
Chop shop.
Yeah.
In fact, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it is interesting though. I feel like everyone's sort of working that out now with the gear. That like you don't hear about people chopping too much now, maybe other than tails.
Not nearly as much before.
Yeah. But anyway, the GoFoil stuff was super fun, and I think the RS 1150.
Well, that's where you're riding right now, right?
Yeah. Mostly that. I've got the 1000, the GT 1250, the GT 400, and then for light wind winging, I got that big GT 2200, which is straight up cheat code. Super fun.
Throw that on a sup, bro.
Yeah, I've done it. It's pretty good. I did it on prone too, like on just the smallest of small days, and it was it doesn't want to turn too great, but you could stay up on foil for a while.
Do you ever get sick of me harassing you to just jump in the fire more?
Oh yeah,
you know, we have definitely different like learning styles, right? Eric and I are more like, hey, I don't know how to do this. Let's try a 5-mile run.
Right.
And you're more calculated. You like a more of a
calculated's a word for it.
So do you ever get sick of my like text like let's go like after you're like I got shit to do today or not for me and I still
you do the same too. You got shit to do too some days where it's pretty fun, but
yeah, I just don't respond to text. I
take the abuse. Yeah,
I just straight ghost.
Yeah. No, it's good. It's good having people push you, but I also know my frustration levels and the way I learn is not the way you guys learn. Call it what you will, but I know myself. If I keep putting myself out there and right, Eric's got a 3 F-bomb rule on a downwinder. I would probably
adopt the rule 3 F-bombs and
I'd have 17.
Go to shore.
I'd have 17 and just be like really pissed off. But that being said, look at what you guys are doing. I'm cool with it. I learn at my own pace, and right now I'm super stoked on prone. But I think I'd rather, for around here with our conditions, I think the winging thing should be. I'm a little more FOMO'd on winging than I am on downwinding, just because I feel like even for the downwinds, it's got to be right. There's small windows, more prone for shockers, and I've already paid some dues on the wing, so.
Right, I just feel knowing your background in sup foiling and being a freaking ogre, strong as shit, knowing like I don't feel like there would be a lot of penalty for you in downwind supping when on viable condition day, right?
Yeah.
You come down, I feel like you just crank right back up and be catching
I don't know.
waves. Yeah.
We'll find out one of these days.
Well, let's find out.
Yeah.
Sooner than later. Let's go.
Right on.
You're pretty sure you'll leave me in the dust.
I doubt it. Once you're up, you'll be like a little. Actually, you know how to read the waves, the bumps. And I did a shore runner with Eric the other day, and I hadn't done one in a while, and I had a shocker. I mean, Eric's put in the miles literally. So you go on a shore runner with him, you're going by yourself, which unless you both take off in the same chip, and you could. Yeah, I think Pedigo, like the three of you guys have had some good sessions where you're all pretty close together and watching each other. But yeah, I think all things that'll come in time. It's been a while for the shore runner, so
I can't promise I won't continue to harass.
You should, bro. I need someone to push me. Oh, so we've got and talking about gear, and the GoFoil stuff's been great. Super fun, pretty intuitive. I like the fixed tails. You don't have to tinker with stuff. They seem to work. Played around with some base plate shimming, which seems to help, I think, because it is so front-footed.
Yeah, initially when you were riding very nose up.
Yes.
When you first got that set up.
Yep.
What was going on there? Was it your board angle in the boxes or?
I think a lot of it was, and Mike's talked about this too. I think the GoFoils do have a little propensity to be nose up. So I
believe that comes from a lot of the development being through winging. Yeah, a lot of the testing.
But it's interesting though, because Armstrong, I think a lot of those wings were designed more with winging in mind. Maybe not the new wings, right? The brand new wings, but they ride so differently. So it is
agree, but they do test really well winging as well.
Yep. I get it. I think as far as prone goes, now that I know a little bit more about it, foot positioning could have been part of it for sure. But I think changing the angle on the bottom of the board was the key, and it didn't take much. I was able to wrangle a Takuma base plate shim to work with the Go foils, just modified it. And then Mike actually...
So you were tuning the nose angle down then? Right?
Yeah, exactly. And it like 2 degrees made a nice difference.
Because I think I remember you like moving your box back and forth all over the place and still like having to like stand super far forward, trying to pin that nose down.
Yeah.
It was just overlifting.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, well, I think I kind of got that covered either with technique or base plate shimming. And I think when you're riding nose up like that, you're just working so much harder and you're not letting the foil do the work. So
right, to a degree, right?
Yeah, for sure.
You want a little bit, but a lot is...
I want a little more neutral, like I think.
Yeah.
Well, and I think even Mike on one of his podcasts was talking about like the Go foil and having the same issues. So I think there's some things that are just hardwired into, and if you choose to go with that fixed tail, then the base plate shim seems to be the best way to work it out. But I've got...
So once you tune that, I remember seeing, next session,
more level,
grave dig delight, easy, you're taking off way inside,
for sure,
pumping right through all that foam, and blasting way outside, and your pump speed was like really fast.
Yeah,
I was impressed. Like the momentum and the top speed you had pumping back out all of a sudden was so much higher.
Yep,
and just the confident in your pump, everything it looked tuned, and dialed.
Yeah.
No, from there, that let you start really laying in your turns much harder than you were before.
Yeah.
Because you're going into your connection turns now with more confidence, more speed, and more control.
100%. Yeah, that is the key. So we've got, I think next week, Christmas might come a few days late, but a couple of the boys here have Eric's new setup coming. And so I've been watching him, test religiously those prototypes and work on a million tails and shim angles and putting in the work. But I'm going to get my hands on one of those setups. So I'll have the 170.
And this is the unifoil
progression, which is going to be cool. Yeah. Yes. So a couple of boys here will be rocking them, and very excited to give that a whirl.
I got to try the 140 briefly for a few waves. I think it was Matt's setup.
Yep. Matt had borrowed one of the prototypes, I think. Yeah.
So Matt had the 140 progression, and we tried it. I got to ride a few waves in a little, a foot overhead down to, waist high by the time the wave died out. And it was, it's a great wing, right off the bat, first wave. It was intuitive, very fast. The glide was there. We were on a longer mast, so I could feel the little extra roll delay because I haven't been riding longer masts in quite a while.
Right.
But yeah, it's kind of exciting.
Yeah,
I'm really I got stoked for Eric because these things, from just watching Eric ride, all these clips that are pouring out right now on Instagram, and then having that experience riding that 140. It's just really excited for Eric and what he's built.
Yeah, I'm usually bobbing around in the background on those clips, so I've watched a lot of that evolution and the surfing he's doing. But I know Eric. He's not going to put his name on something that he doesn't, really believe in.
100%.
So
he wouldn't have it any other way.
No.
Let's give a shout out to Miss. That face. What'd you give me that face?
I don't know.
Miss Sarah Antonson.
Oh, for sure. Oh my God. Yeah.
For providing the
queen
foil crew with video footage. We've learned so much just watching our own footage back.
Yeah.
She's pretty selfless out there, standing in the sun, standing in the cold, and
sweating, freezing.
And lugging that gear down to the beach back and forth, and then taking her time to sort our clips by name and then deliver them to us. She's the best. We definitely owe her a big.
Yeah. And it's funny that talk about learning, that no better way to learn than, watching yourself. And it's painful at first, but there's no better way.
It kind of stings every time I watch a video myself.
Or you have like one good run and then you blow it at the end doing something so stupid. You're like, it could have been a whole clip. But yeah, no, she is the best.
That kind of brings up a little plug here. For Eric and I, we're going to start our foil camps again.
Awesome.
In April. and you've witnessed.
I was out surfing with you guys
you've
during the
hung
camp.
out during some of the camps and rode, and even like throwing tips out there and some advice to some of our campers. It was pretty awesome. But yeah, just kind of remind me we're gonna have, always we do the video every session.
Yeah.
And then we do a video breakdown because it is just, it's
the
hands
key.
down the best learning tool you can have.
Yeah. That was fun to watch. It was the last one you guys did. You had that really good crew from South Florida, and those guys were great. And I could watch what you were coaching, and I could watch them apply. And then even hanging out for the video session after, like you could see it like sinking in, it's really cool.
It's satisfying even, as a coach, watching it as a coach, it's so satisfying seeing people, watch themselves, hear advice, apply it, and then get better.
100% in a short amount of time. And I think the last time that there was like really fun waves, it was like perfect. I think you guys actually have scored on all the camps.
We've had an assortment of days for sure.
Yeah.
There's definitely a couple of challenging days mixed in with those camps as well, and some couple epic days.
Yeah. When are you starting those back up?
April.
Nice. Yeah. Oh, that'll be cool.
So we're excited. We're still working on logistics.
They came out with I saw something, but Solo Shot came out with like an updated setup, if you know the Solo Shots.
Yeah.
And
I struggled with mine for years.
I think everyone did, but supposedly this new version is you don't have to spend 20 minutes jumping up and down in front of it to get it to sync up with whatever it is. I think I'd like to see a review on it because there were some bugs that are pretty well noted. And
I'm still skeptical because, that would make it Solo Shot number 4.
Yeah,
3.7. They couldn't get it done by the third one.
Yeah,
it's getting a little.
But if they did, it'd be a good investment because as good as Sarah is, she's not around all the time.
Yeah, not everyone has a Sarah either.
And then you could trade up in the water, and you could share.
Hand off the tracker. Yeah,
exactly.
Totally.
Yeah, it'd be really cool.
Video's the key. Absolutely. Dave, do you have any advice for the new foiler? Someone that's learning.
Have more patience than me would be
don't beat the shit out of yourself after every bad session.
Exactly. Yeah. Don't hate on yourself.
You are good at
Oh, dude, for sure.
Flogging yourself
that
on the batter.
That's why winging is so brutal for me. Yeah. But no, baby
for
steps.
every wing sesh.
Yes.
13 hours locked in a dark room.
Flogging yourself. Actually, the flogging starts when you're doing that walk of shame with the heavy board and your wing is like full of sand and you're like, why do I do that?
I'm walking back on my knees.
With that guy with the cross. The guy with the cross.
Oh, jeez.
But yeah, I would say small victories are important. Like you're not gonna be Brian or Eric or Pedigo in the first couple sessions, but baby steps. And then protect yourself. Like I wear a bump cap now all the time, just because now I kind of feel naked without it. But yeah, if you're getting into it, I would go full like light vest, protective vest, and a helmet, big time, because it's super dangerous. And I think it also gives you more confidence as a learner, because those accidents are going to happen. You're gonna have some close calls, but and have fun with it. And we have a buddy that, and I think Eric's talked about it, but like our friend Greg never surfed before, and if you've surfed, you've got a big advantage. You just know where to be to catch a wave, and we sort of forget sometimes that we're just out there foiling. Where once you start getting used to catching waves, it's not the hardest part. Maybe getting to your feet is, but if you've surfed, I think it makes it considerably easier.
Absolutely,
time,
we already
obviously.
have our 1,000 hours in popping up quickly.
Right.
Stroking into waves.
Now you just have to unlearn those 1,000 hours, parts of it, like
the riding aspects,
or not going back foot, going front foot. Right. That's the big one. And
it doesn't all translate, but it is still a great advantage having surf experience.
And I don't know.
But the beautiful part, like an example of Greg, anyone can learn.
Yeah.
You don't have to have it.
Yeah. It's starting to click for him.
But then you might want to put a little more time in on the wing or the wake, that kind of thing.
For sure.
Before you hit the ocean.
Speaking
of accidents,
you
had a little accident.
Oh, public service announcement. So I just picked up a new board, a new portal, right? So Eric and Mike's
board business.
Right.
Brand.
But cool because it's I think it's a lot of their ideas kind of combined into one board, which is great, and really digging the board. But I did a shore runner with Eric, or I didn't, mine didn't go too well, and Eric was gone. But so we were going to meet at a designated spot, and Sarah was going to come pick us up, and I knew I wasn't going to make it down there, and it was kind of going to be getting dark. So I went back to the car, and I broke my routine, and I was like, oh, I got to text Eric right now. So I put my board on the driver's side of my car at the back corner, and I didn't lift up the back hatch. And then I went and texted and got changed, and totally forgot that I hadn't taken my board apart or put it in the car. And I was just on my way and ran over the nose of my board, and learned a lesson about don't break your routine. Like, you put your keys in one spot. You just do don't break your routine, people. And thank God, this board's insane. It's got 2 little pressure cracks. It didn't break the stringer. It's a mild repair, which is unbelievable.
It is kind of like free advertising now, because that thing, it handled very well being run over by an entire car.
There's some slight tire indentations in there, but I mean, the board's going to be fine. Yeah. So talk about construction, and I've always thought, Mike's boards were bulletproof, and Eric, absolutely. But this is a true testament. That's the nose up. The board was upside down. There was not even a ding on the nose.
Yeah, the nose didn't crush in.
I would have thought for sure it would have crushed the nose.
It's barely scratched on the nose.
Absolutely.
Bizarre.
Yeah. I mean,
I've done something really similar.
Yeah.
I loaded up all my stuff, and my board with the foil still on it was on the ground, like in my blind spot, and I pulled out of my spot and knocked the board onto its side, and took a nice little chip out of the wingtip, and could have been so much worse though.
Which was that, the 925?
I can't even remember if it's here.
I think he chopped one, and I didn't know if you chopped it because you needed to or you wanted to.
No, the 925 I chopped because I wanted it to ride more like a 120 at the time. I was jealous I didn't have a 120.
Right.
And actually texted Kane and asked him, like, how much would I do here to chop to get this certain performance? And he gave me the ratio, and so I did it. But the problem with that chop was then it rode very similar to the 725, except the 725 still rode better. So I made my 925 obsolete.
Yep.
Well,
I've seen you surf that 725 in like ankle to shin high conditions, and it's unbelievably impressive that you made that thing work.
Yeah,
crazy.
I did make it work. When there was a little juice or backwash to help the pump back out, or a little bit juicier waves, it was such a good foil. I love the foil. At the time I didn't have a better option.
Right.
And it's not the ideal wing to ride around here. It doesn't have enough low end to really flow through, the mush in the flat spots here. Definitely can make it work.
Yeah.
My cardio probably was never better
right.
riding that thing
right.
on the regular,
Right.
But
well, now you got that sweet spot with 810.
So I have an 810 prototype. It's called a Halcyon.
Yep.
And 655. It's called the Uno, and that's a high aspect with a bunch of camber in it. And both those wings, have a much greater low end, and both being around the same size, small and maneuverable. So it's been nice. Yeah.
So you think you'd ride that 6 whatever in head high surf around here, or more towing, or both?
I've been on the 655 in sessions. We've been out before in small waves.
Sick.
And yeah, when people see how tiny it is, they're like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Why what are you doing? But but just the design of it and the prototype tail just gives it low end with great maneuverability.
Yeah.
So it's nice. It was something I definitely needed around here.
Yeah, for sure. Well, how sick is our sandbars are pretty good right now, which, like, remember when you first came here, the sandbars were horrible. It was like,
I didn't know any better at the time, but yeah, I was like, oh,
it was the worst. Yeah, they were, at the time, it was like super shallow on the outside bar and then the trough. But like at low tide, it was ankle deep. Like people could walk out there and stand on the bar. And when you first got here, it was like treacherous.
That's right. We were doing standing takeoffs.
You had to.
Trying to stand on the edge of the bar.
Absolutely.
Leap onto the wave, onto foil.
And then some days, if you couldn't get up on foil immediately high, you were just every pump, you were just like fingers crossed. Like it was sketch.
I'm surprised we didn't rip any of our boxes out because we failed
agreed.
many a grave dig
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the day. Just we were going over the handlebars left and right just because it was so shallow. And
It made me
dying to foil.
really like realizing that, having a bigger foil for those days was crazy. And I didn't really want to go the shorter route. I stay on that 29.5 for the most part. And
mast. Yeah.
yeah. So having like that 1150 is incredible for the lift for, all around. But then the GT 1250 and even the 1400 turned really well, pumped pretty well, a little slower, but just such a good board for those shallow days because the second you got to your feet, and you're super good at that too. Like as you paddle in, you kind of engage that foil right away. You're up on foil super quick. And I kind of had to learn that, and it helped having the bigger foils for me.
Yeah. Also, I was going to say, during that time, I watched your pop-up technique improve really fast out of necessity.
No choice.
Right? Yeah. Out of necessity. Yeah. You started getting quicker.
Had to.
And driving off that back foot like immediately. As your foot
and then
landed.
you could kind of take off on an angle, right? Which you need to on those days, because if you go straight, you're done. So yeah, you get up on that high line, but you get up on foil right away, and that gives you the exit.
These first 3 pumps are like big explosive pumps.
Yep.
Like right off the bat, you have to really gun it to get out of there.
And once you do, it changes the whole wave if you can start with it.
Yeah. That setup. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
all about setting yourself
The gravedigger
up right.
delight. You don't want it.
Well, Dave, thanks so much for coming on the podcast, dude. Really stoked you're my first guest. This has been a fun conversation. Been fun bringing up some of stuff from the past year and a half here, joining you and the Jack's Foil crew.
Awesome, man. Well, thanks. Good to be on here and happy to help out. And whatever. It's just fun being part of this crew, and it's fun to talk story a little bit, talk gear, and dork out East Coast style. So, but yeah, it's been great having you part of the gang here, and it's fun. And if anyone wants to come up and foil, we're pretty open armed. Just don't foil at the pier, I guess.
Yeah, just don't foil where the surfers are, because
right.
there's miles and miles of
we don't
open
have to
beach break to enjoy.
Yeah, man.
Well, again, thanks so much, buddy, and thank you for everyone for listening. Love to have you on again.
Anytime.
We just live 3 miles down the road now.
Next
a little
time,
further away, but
next time let's get a couple of the other boys and crank a few beers and have a chat.
Yeah,
I think it'd be really fun.
Thank you for tuning in, everyone, for episode 3 of the Foil the World podcast with Dave Barachevic and Foil the World.
Nice. Woo!